Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Careerism TV. My name is JT O'Donnell. I'm your host. I'm actually the founder of Careerism.com, which is the website that you're looking at here. And it's also the website that hosts these wonderful free webinars that you're able to take advantage of each and every week. Today's session we tried this session and we had a perfect storm moment last week and we weren't able to get this thing to go live. Technical difficulties, right? The power of technology. But we've got it all worked out. We're back better than ever. Got even more people signed up because it is a hot topic today. We are going to be talking about career ADD, and we're going to be doing it with Shell Mendelson. Now, Shell is one of our approved experts, and you're taking a look at her profile here on Careerism.com. Shell is the founder of Passion to Career, and I can show you that not only does she have a website, but she hands down, little side note, has one of the coolest Twitter feeds I've ever seen. She's got a picture, and I don't know if you can all see it here. I'll try to make the screen a little bit bigger for you. But she has this picture of a beautiful place that she hopes to retire to. And every time I go to her Twitter feed, just random here, I feel so relaxed when I go to this page and I look at that picture. It makes me really want to be there. So if you're a Twitterholic like myself, you should go over and follow Shell, especially if by the end of today's session you think you have career ADD. And of course, you know the deal, folks. You should definitely hook up with her on LinkedIn. There's her LinkedIn profile right there. She's a career counselor, a coach, a speaker, and she specializes, as I mentioned, in something called career ADD and the career ADD lifestyle. And you're looking at her website right here called Passion to Career. And on this site, you have got to go over there. That's passiontocareer.com. She actually tells you the 11 signs that will tell you if you are afflicted with career ADD. So you can see that here. You can come over and check that out, hear her own story, and better still, even set up a mini session with Shell. So folks, listen up today, ask your questions, diagnose yourself, figure out if you've got career ADD, and if you do, I've got the expert for you. So probably enough talking about it. We should probably just bring her up on the show. What do you say? Welcome to the show, Shell.
Thank you. Great to be here again.
So listen, right out of the gate, this term career ADD, something near and dear to my heart. I believe it's out there in full force. The first time I met you, I said, that's it. Will you please be our career ADD expert on Careerism? I'm sure you remember that. Tell the audience why you decided to specialize in career ADD, why it's so important to you.
Well, let me get to what you just said. When you and I talked, it was a cathartic moment for me, and it made me realize, oh my gosh, this is why I've got ADD. Because I'm a career counselor. I've loved doing it for years, for probably 22 years now. And knowing that I could work with everybody and I'm talking all ages, and I never felt good about just focusing on one age group. And now when it made so much sense that this topic, people with ADD lifestyles, is something that I personally have experience with and I can help people with. So in answer to your question about why did I specialize, that's one reason now. The next one is that in 2008, I was diagnosed myself with ADD. And I had to go through the stages of grief that a lot of us go through when we realize we have maybe a disability. And there's nothing we can do about it. It's something we have to accept about ourselves. So going through those stages and finally getting to acceptance, I was able to realize that it's something that I would have to manage for the rest of my life. So the first thing that happened to me, and some of you might be able to relate to this, is that I started seeing the symptoms everywhere. And particularly I would see them in the clients I was working with. And I was realizing, that some of them may be ADD, but some of them may just have symptoms of ADD, which, as you know, with technology and with all the things going on today, a lot of people are having this issue. A lot of people are experiencing this symptom, and what it simply means is that we're being pulled in all directions. And when it comes to career, that ends up getting on the back burner. And then we become paralyzed and can't really do very much about it. So, and that's true, of course, with people with ADD, which I'll define a little bit more in a second. So, like I said, I was able to realize that I could work with everyone and help people, because this is something that not only I've experienced pretty much my entire life, but it's something that, I could actually help people with, and was incredible fun for me. I mean, it was just something I really enjoyed doing. It came very natural to me, which, by the way, is how it should be when you're doing something you love. It should come very natural. Were you going to say something? Go ahead.
No, and it's just, I want to jump on that a little bit because I think that you, as somebody who's recognized this in yourself over your lifetime, also happen to be a very successful entrepreneur. And you told me that part of the reasons you think you were so successful in starting up that business and developing it was the fact that you leveraged your ADD attributes. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And you're speaking of Kids Art, which is the international children's art franchise that I founded in 1998. And it was something that I woke up one morning with the name Kids Art on my mind. I had had a child later in life, and you know what happens, and this happens to everybody, that you transition throughout your life to doing different things. Not everybody starts out, that you may start out with one career and end up with, something different. But what happened to me was I was doing career counseling for years, and then I realized that I had this child that I wanted to be home with, and everything is about kids, right, in my mind. And I'm thinking, well, okay, how can I leverage that somehow, because I'm entrepreneurial, right? I'm not just going to stay home and do nothing. So what happened was I started thinking about education and art education. Art's very near and dear to me. I'm an artist, and I love art, always have. And my best friend at the time, who I'd literally grown up with, was an artist, and she and I always talked, and she and I always wanted to do something together. So I just thought, well, where can I find these art education programs for kids? And there was really nothing. There was nothing on a national scale. So I decided, okay, if somebody's got to do it, I guess it's got to be me. So I worked, she and I started working together, and we eventually created Kids Art, which is now an international children's art franchise. We're in 9 countries, I think 10 now, and in 29 states. And I eventually left it because truly what I love to do is what I'm doing now. I wasn't loving the day-to-day of it after all. And in fact, I'm going to talk about that a little bit, as far as, what the clues are to what, how to manage career ADD. So, yeah.
Excellent. I just want to remind everyone that we're talking to Shell Mendelson. She's a Careerism approved expert, and you're looking at her bio here. You can find her on Twitter. And of course, you can check her out at passion2career.com. There is her website, where she specializes in career ADD. And you'll find her on LinkedIn as well, so there's her LinkedIn profile. But definitely, folks, I really want to stress that you should go over and check out this site, passion2career.com. As we continue this conversation with Shell, if it sounds more and more like you want to spend some time on this site, and definitely take Shell up on her offer to do a mini consult with her, because I think it'll help you immensely. Now, Shell, I want to talk more about some of the things that you mentioned that gave you telltale signs that you should leverage your career ADD. You just mentioned that you woke up with Kids Art on the brain, and that it sort of consumed your life, this thought process. That seems to be a trait that I often hear people that fall into this category of career ADD possess. They get almost to the point of a distraction, consumed with an idea, and it infuses them with this great amount of energy, and it's really all they can think about. So when you have people like that, how do you coach them? How do you tap into that? What do you instruct them to do so that they can make the most of that?
Well, I have a process that I work with them, and so what we do is we do some double checking. I'll go back and I'll kind of rework it and have them answer some questions, write some stories, use the Bowles method, the what colors your parachute method, to some extent, only I use it a little bit differently with people with ADD, because I have to kind of follow and make sure that they're on track and they can stay on track and stay focused. So it's not done exactly the same way. But if there's something that keeps coming up over and over and over again like that, I am the first one to jump on it and get them to really start taking some action and talking to people, and and brainstorming with them, and keeping them, like I said, focused, because I can see when somebody's getting a little bit out of focus. I can tell when things are kind of going off a little bit so that I can sort of bring them back
Talk
to
to
where
us
they
about
need to be.
this focus. Why do they get off focus? As somebody who's experienced this yourself, what's going on in your mind? Can you share with people the symptoms that you suddenly find yourself sort of distracted or going off course? Why is that happening, and what does that feel like?
Well, what it feels like is all of a sudden you get this urge to do something else. And I'm when you're talking about careers and figuring out what you want to do, the first thing I look at with people are working conditions. Like, what are the conditions that they need to be in so that they can do their best work? And the first thing that I had to do after I was diagnosed, and it didn't happen beforehand, I just kind of did it. Because if you're not aware of it, you're just going to do it anyway. Is is I had to figure out how I work the best, what the best way for me to work is. And I am like a lot of people with ADD. I can't stick with one thing for more than maybe 10, 15 minutes if it's not something that I'm completely enthralled with. Now, if I'm completely enthralled with it, I'm going to hyper focus. And that might take me into the night. you know. So what happens when I have things that I know I have to do, like everybody does, is that I try and schedule it so that I'm doing 10 minutes. I get up and make some tea. I get up and, pet my cat, play with my cat and dog, whatever I have to do just to break it up a little bit. And that I work into my day because it has to be there for me. So when I talk to people about working conditions, a lot of times with career counseling, experts will focus, or counselors will focus on your interest and your skills and those kind of things. That's not what I do in the beginning. I try to focus more on the working conditions. And then we get to the other part. Because the conditions, if you don't have those, the rest of it's not going to make sense. So I was going to say some of the things to look for that would define career ADD for people would be that, for example, we're beyond stuck on how to form a meaningful career path and cannot focus long enough to consider options, okay? And the results, and I call it career paralysis. And then and the other thing I think is true for most people is that we are longing to serve others. And I think that's very true for people with ADD. We're longing to serve others, but realize that with these symptoms, we really have to love what we're doing first in order to serve in a meaningful way. Now, you might say, is that that's true for everybody? Well, it is. Everybody should love what they're doing. I mean, think about it, it would change the world. But people, especially with ADD, absolutely must to do their best work. And what happens when they don't? I'll go into a whole list of things that happen. One of them is that they become very desperate. There's that whole career desperation thing. And then other things that we're unable to cope in the workplace because of our symptoms. It impacts our coworkers, our boss, if we have employees, our business partners, vendors, board members, anybody that you're dealing with in business or your work life is going to be impacted. So the results of that are you can get fired, you get voted out of your company, you have workplace alienation, people want to avoid you, or you job hop, right? So if these are things that any of you are experiencing, you may want to look at this as one of the reasons, or may look at some of the symptoms.
You know, it's huge to hear you talk about this because, first of all, I hear you look at this as an advantage, not a disadvantage. Which I think is such a brilliant mindset to have. We've got a lot of people sitting on the call today listening to this going, she's describing me to perfection, to perfection. What I also think is refreshing to hear and why I admired you so much is this idea of, yes, the career coaches that focus on your passions and your interests and whatnot, that's fine for certain types of people. But for us, career ADD, it's environment first. I mean, the fact that you have such acute knowledge of this, that let's build you a place where you can do your best work. I think I heard you say that 3 or 4 times. Right there that says you believe that people with career ADD can do great work, can do their best work. And for that matter, maybe do better work than others if they're given the right environment. And as you talked about, focus on something that matters. And this is something that you've talked about with me several times before, and I want to talk about this a bit more, is how important it is for them to really love, basically be obsessed with what they're doing. How do you tap into that? Let's say you've worked with a person, you've gotten them through the environment phase, you've helped them identify where they do their best work. Now as their coach, how are you tapping into that and getting them to find that thing that they really love?
Well, for me, it's really important that they understand that this is a spiritual heart process. And that's true for everyone. But for people with ADD, again, to get to that, it's really important to listen to yourself. And so I'm constantly checking in. And whenever, I have to check myself to make sure that I'm not offering up information before people are ready to hear it. Because, in my mind, as with if you're hearing somebody talk about something and you say, oh, they'd be great at this or they'd be great at that, if you start saying those things to the person, they're not ready to hear it, then it's not going to have any impact and you're going to lose credibility, right? So I try and keep it as neutral as possible and always remind them to check in with their gut. How does this feel? The whole way through, that's what we're doing. So there's never an opportunity to start going into your head and saying, well, other people are doing this, or I should be doing that, or I shouldn't be doing that. That's like the kiss of death when it comes to career, right there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I agree with you, and I think I see so many people in a crisis of confidence who have branded themselves, or maybe people around them have branded them as flawed, or there's something wrong with you, and you have no focus, or you have no drive. Right? You have no patience. You're overreaching. You expect too much from a job, and they feel beaten down. And so it's really nice to hear you say they're not wrong. It's just they don't understand you, right?
They don't understand you, and you're probably in the wrong job if you're experiencing all those things. Those things should not be experienced on a day-to-day basis. There's really, that's the kiss of death for career, for people with career ADD. They should be really, and the thing is, and you and I were talking about this beforehand, is that career counseling or investing in career counseling is something we've needed to educate people about. Because if they could learn all this stuff and do it, you can read about it in a book. There's a book for literally everything that teaches you how to do everything, probably even medicine if you went to the library and looked something up. And there's the Merck's manual you can look up, or you can look it up on the internet. But the truth is, to have somebody who can help guide you and really has your best interest at heart and who's neutral is what a lot of people need, and a lot of people don't feel that's necessary. They don't want to make that investment. And I'm here to say that if you're ready to do something and you know that you need to be doing it and you haven't been doing it, number one, how's that working for you? And number two, get some help. Get some help. There's a lot of us out there. I'm not the only one. Of course, come to me. I'd love it, but especially with the career ADD stuff. But the other thing I wanted to say is that my kids would not have been started had I not had ADD. It was something that I became hyper-focused about. And it used all the skills that I love to use. It used my creativity, which is a huge thing for people with ADD in general. So creative. I mean, the world literally cannot run without people with ADD. We are the movers and shakers of the world. We are the inventors. We are the entrepreneurs. Richard Branson, who started Virgin Records, he's like severe ADD. And even Steve Jobs has some definite characteristics of ADD. And JFK, ADD. I mean, these are people that change the world. So we are the movers and shakers, and every one of us has those gifts inside of us that have to come out. And if you don't find a way to get them out, I'm going to say something that might be controversial. You're being greedy. You're being stingy. Not greedy, you're being stingy.
I like greedy.
Yeah.
I'll agree with that. I love that you pointed out some very famous figures because it's true. I mean, there's been tons of studies that show that many of the most successful entrepreneurs probably went undiagnosed with ADD. And if for no other reason you read their bios, you read the histories of them, and you listen to how they acted and worked, you know, you have all these people that observe them, and you know they did. You know that they had creative, they were geniuses. And to your point, when you have a talent, it's a blessing and a curse. Okay, but you need to do something with it. Now, with that in mind, by the way, I love that you talked about the need to seek help. And, you know, I was saying that to you because I guess I get a little frustrated because you never see people going to their doctor or their dentist or their lawyer or their accountant and saying, you have to give me the advice for free or cut me a deal. You go to those people because they have advice that can change your life that's important. And then here we are, career coaches, you know, where you spend 1/3 of your life, what directly impacts your happiness, both with your self-respect as well as your finances. And yet people don't want to invest and get some help. And they wonder why, as you said, in spite of all the free resources out there, they're not seeing results because they're not working specifically with someone on their situation. That being said, I think people with career ADD particularly suffer in a recession like we're experiencing right now, and I want to talk more about that with you. So here we are, 9.1% unemployment. We were looking at a statistic in the webinar we held earlier today, and it showed that, you know, as early as 2001 to 2008, we went from the average length of unemployment in America being about 10 weeks to 15 weeks. From 2008 to 2011, we went for the average length of unemployment from 20 weeks to 40 weeks. I mean, this is insane. There's a big problem out there with lack of jobs. We just need to own up to that. But I think it almost creates even more intensity for someone with career ADD because there's less opportunities. And as you just pointed out, they have to love what they do. Less of stuff that they love to do, right? So what's your advice? How are you counseling and coaching folks with career ADD in the recession right now?
Stay with it, because eventually you're going to start connecting with the right people and you're going to start heading in the right direction, and you're going to be eventually on the top of the heap because you're going to have a direction. How often do you hear from employers, I don't know what this person really wants? I mean, they've come to talk to me about this job, but I don't really know what they want. It looks like they just want a job. When you know what you want and you have that direction and you're armed with that, you go in and all of a sudden you're speaking with passion, you're speaking with a lot of information and knowledge, and you get excited and enthusiastic, and you can present that to an employer. Well, if you had a choice of choosing somebody who is directionless over somebody who has a direction with passion, who do you think the employer is going to choose? They have a choice of thousands of people for every job, right? So that's what it does. It will help with just having that, and plus you're walking in with confidence. You know, I mean, you're walking with an attitude, a good attitude, a positive attitude. You're walking in, strutting your stuff, you know, in a good way, and that's what people want to see.
You know, it's funny that you say that. Going back to the great examples you gave of all these famous, successful entrepreneurs and people in positions, they were insanely persuasive. And they were persuasive because of their belief and their passion and their intensity for what they do. And I love what you're saying because I agree with you. I talk to recruiters and hiring managers day in and day out, right? And they're telling me in spite of all this quote unquote talent in the market, they're not finding their gems. And what's missing is exactly what you just said. They just seem like they want a job. I don't get any sense of, not urgency, because urgency can come across as desperation, sense of commitment, sense of focus, sense of appreciation for what we do and why we do it. They're just not feeling it. And I think, to your point, folks with career ADD, if they can really focus in on what they want and then get out and talk to the right people, competitive advantage, right?
Right. Well, what I know is that what I do and what you do are an incredible service to people that will last them far beyond the 20 weeks or whatever it is. It's what they should be doing in those 20 weeks. You need to take a step back and you need to start doing this work, and there's really no getting around it. I mean, there's no shortcut. It's an inner process. People I work with will tell you that. They'll say, gosh, I wish I had started this earlier. But now you've started it. You've gotten it going now. And that's the most important thing, is to start now. Start from where you are. Because there's no way to get around it. I wish I could say there's an easier, streamlined version of it. It's kind of like going on a diet. You can take diet pills and you can try all this other stuff, but really, eating the right foods in the right proportions and exercising is really the only way to lose weight.
Right.
It's similar idea.
It's funny that you say that, because we talk a lot about here, I'm sure you've heard at Careerism, that every job is temporary. And then gone are the days where you stay with a company 20, 30, 40 years. Based on what I'm hearing from you, that would be the kiss of death for somebody with career DD anyways, right? They don't want that. They can't survive 30, 40 years in the same job day in and day out. So what you're proposing is, if you don't learn how to fish, then you're not going to be able to fish over and over again like you're going to need to in order to feel fulfilled as somebody with career ADD. Is that true?
That's true. And sort of what this process involved, as it does with, I work with people without ADD too, but you complete your roadmap. If you don't have your roadmap, you have nowhere to go from there. So even though I started kids art after I had been doing career counseling for years, there were so many elements of what I had been doing in it for me that I took along with me. And it was the next phase for me in my life. If I were to go back and, as I did, went back and looked at my roadmap, it went right along with it was an easy transition for me. So that's what happens when you start, you put all the pieces together, you come out with a picture of who you are and what your ideal work should look like, right? But it changes over time. But it's much easier when you have that roadmap. It's much easier to make the next transition. And particularly with people with ADD or career ADD, because nothing is worse than having anxiety when you realize that you're just bored with what you're doing, right? All of a sudden, which can happen, I started out on one path working in vocational rehabilitation, and I worked with, I worked in a system that I loved in the beginning, and eventually it ended up driving me crazy. And luckily for me, I'm the kind of person that can make those transitions pretty easily. So I was able to do that. But I knew that, oh my gosh, if I don't get out of this, I've got to do something. And I started taking the steps early on, getting additional training, looking into different things until I ended up doing career counseling with the general public at that point, instead of working with people with disabilities and the workers' compensation system, which I didn't enjoy after a while. So I don't know if that makes sense, but basically what I'm saying is that the transition should be easy, the next step to doing what you really love and what you should be doing. And then when that step is you're ready to take another one, you take another one. You're going to hit different forks in the road, but it comes easier.
Shell, what are some of the other clues or telltale signs that we may have career ADD? What are some of the other things that we should be paying attention to about ourselves, that maybe experiences that we've had that should be giving us, a little red flag or a little warning light?
Well, I'd say your number one working condition, but what I found is many people with ADD or career ADD are just better off working on their own in some way, finding a way to work a little bit more independently. If it has to be within the workplace, to maybe find a way to get an office or to get a space that's a little bit closed off with less distractions and gives you a little bit more flexibility and freedom. And if you don't have that, then you're in the wrong workspace. But for me, I knew that working independently was going to be very important for me. I've had a home office for many years. I worked as a subcontractor and a contractor, and started up, companies, but always working from home, especially when my son was born. I knew I wanted to do that. I just never stopped. So I can't even imagine going to work in an office that I have to go to and report to. It just doesn't work for me. So, it started out with me where I worked for a company, but I worked independently within that company. And I could go to meetings when I wanted, make my own schedule, leave the office when I needed to. So those are the kinds of things I think that are clues. When you see that you're you just dread having to go to a space and stay there the whole time, or not have the freedom to get up and do what you need to do to feel like you can actually get something accomplished.
It's funny that you say that because I think a lot of people with career ADD, the idea of having to go to the same place every day or do the same thing every day gives them such agita, right? So they just get so worked up. That's got to be a really clear sign that something's wrong here, right?
Something is wrong, and you know what? It's okay to think that it can be different. It is okay, but you really need to do all the other pieces of it too. And that's why, the first thing for everyone can do is evaluate their workspace or evaluate where they have worked and why it didn't work and what they could have used. Maybe did they need to plug into some music every now and then? If they were working in a cubicle, what about making sure that your desk is faced away so you don't get distractions, or you set up the visuals the way you need them to be set up, or you need to be allowed to take breaks to go, maybe how you determine. If you need to set a timer, set a timer. I've done that before. I've set a timer when I knew I was doing an activity. In fact, right now I'm having to take a test that goes on through December. It's like I have to do all these assignments to get the certification. Oh, God, I really don't like doing it. It's not something that's fun for me, but I have to do it, and it's important to me to do it. So I'm having to schedule regular breaks and sometimes whole days in between this activity just to make sure that I get it done and to meet the deadline I have to meet. So it's important. Those things are important.
Do you find that people with career ADD learn differently? You talk about this being a struggle for you, taking these tests and studying and whatnot. Are career ADD folks more active learners, or is it just they don't like a constraint on the way that they learn? What do you think that's all about?
I think that's an individual thing. I think everybody learns differently. I mean, you've heard of the people who learn more auditorily. I really do believe in that whole process. It's really a personal thing. So people with ADD, I mean, can learn the same as other people, but they just might need to define their how they do it. How they time things or when they do it. They may need to manage that part a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But for me, I learn more visually, more hands-on, and through reading. I learn through a variety of ways, but it can't just be one way. It's got to be a variety. That's how I learn the best.
Right. I want to stop you there for a second and just remind everyone that we are talking to Careerism-approved expert Shell Mendelson. Shell specializes in career ADD and the ADD lifestyle. You can see her beautiful Twitter feed right here, and of course she's on LinkedIn as well. But this is her website, which focuses in on this subject, right? Finding career satisfaction, especially if you're having the career ADD tendencies. And there's a wonderful test on this site which you can take that gives you the 11 sort of signs or symptoms that you might have career ADD. So I hope you'll head over to her site, which is called passiontocareer.com. That's passiontocareer.com. So Shell, the fact that we're saying, all right, let's not look at this as an illness. I mean, we're defining it, we're labeling it career ADD, but we want to look at it as a blessing and leverage the things that it does for you. To recap, you've talked about focusing in on your environment first, so making sure you've got a conducive environment, and then from there, starting to find, as opposed to a job or a company, an interest, a thing that really lights your fire, that keeps you engaged, right? So that you're feeling that passion, because you were talking about the ability to be hyper-focused or hyper-productive. It sounds a lot like it might be being in the zone. Does that sound about right?
Very much.
So,
very much.
How does a person then, once they've found this with you, okay, I know my environment and I know the direction I want to go in, how do folks with career ADD then execute that plan? How do they get to that place where they're now doing that work? What do you have them do?
Well, again, when I work with people individually, it's an individual kind of thing. Typically, if they have a pretty clear understanding of where they want to go, the next thing would be to start talking to people. And you've heard the term informational interview. I just don't, it's kind of overused. But I think for the purpose of doing this exercise, it's important to start talking to people that are doing the work that you're wanting to do, and to really do it in a way that you're comfortable with. And for some people, it means getting out of your comfort zone a little bit, and just sort of, this is a part that might not be so fun for some people, and it might be awesome for other people. And so, I could give all the traditional ways of conducting an informational interview, but I think it's important at that point, when you've done a sufficient amount of inner work in terms of identifying different aspects of what you need in your work environment, and that also includes people. And I kind of want to backtrack for a second and say that one of the other clues is to know what kind of people that you want to be surrounded by in your career job. And I'll take another step here and say that you want people who are going to support you and not judge you as much as possible. And also on the other hand of that, you need to be confident and comfortable enough in yourself to know how to treat them so that they will continue to support you. And what I mean by that, I'll give a really good example of when I was a CEO of Kids Art, and the person who was the assistant that worked with me was very analytical, very detailed. She was the opposite of me, okay? She didn't understand me. I was undiagnosed at the time. And so what I would do was I would say, can you do this, this, and this? And I would not ask her, what are you doing now? What's important to you? It's like I wanted to get it off of my plate. So I would, in a very self-centered kind of way, although at the time I was just I wasn't thinking of her. I was just trying to think about what needed to get done. And I would say, would you just, could you do this? And she interpreted that as, I have to do it now, I have to drop everything. And so it's really important to clue into where other people are as well, not just yourself, and really see how you may be impacting people. And how that can translate in the workplace is in literally any job that you're doing. How are you impacting, how are people receiving who you are and how you go about doing things? Are you taking them into consideration as well?
It's interesting that you say that, because if I'm hearing you correctly, some of our listeners today maybe have had experiences where the feedback in the office was, you're not sensitive, or you expect too much from people, or you're dropping things on people's plates, or you're not explaining things well enough. Those sorts of things. I think that's a great example of maybe telltale signs that these individuals have career ADD. Would you agree?
I would totally agree. I mean, it's like, I think we just want to get it out. And so we might verbally vomit on people, pardon the expression, but, we just expect that people understand us or can read our minds, and it's not true. So part of our training is to train other people. A part of our managing of our symptoms in an environment, and that's even in a place where you love, even if you're in the perfect, you're always going to be working with other people to some extent. And so being cognizant of those behaviors and how they impact people is really going to be important. At the same time, surrounding yourself with people who pretty much, get it, and you feel comfortable enough to let them know. I think you should let them know. And some people are concerned with, well, I don't want to be labeled ADD. But I think it's really important to let them know that you have these quirks, these characteristics. And this is the best way for me to do the kind of job that you need me to do. I need to have this in order to do this. So you've got to be able to communicate those things to people in the workplace. And if you can't, you're going to end up stuck again. It's just going to, it could be a disaster.
I like that advice, because what you're saying is the best defense is a good offense, right? If I go in and manage people's expectations, prepare them for how I'm going to be, and educate them on how to leverage my strengths, but also how to minimize my weaknesses, aka give me feedback if I'm doing something that's not working for you, or I'm not being clear, or whatever. It is about good communication, is about setting communication standards, isn't it? And I think that this is wonderful advice. when you're working with people, do you coach them? Will you actually talk them through how they might want to present themselves, or some things they might want to remember to say or share in order to let people, know and understand their situation?
Yeah, I do role playing, definitely.
Oh, fantastic. Role playing is ideal. It's particularly important, I think, just to get people comfortable with it. You just said something interesting, too. Do you find that a lot of people are embarrassed or don't want to admit that they have this, or they try to play it down or deny it? Because I guess I see so many advantages to it. I feel like, hey, it's just a strength, just like any other strength or weakness. They come as a package deal, but...
Well, since it's in the DSM-4, I believe now, as being a disability, and people are treated with medication. People are treated in different ways for it. It can be a label, and a lot of people have said that to me, that I don't particularly want people to know I have this, blah blah blah. So you can couch it in different language and just say, this is how I work the best, and is this okay with you? Will this work for you? And it's a back and forth. And in fact, that can go on in the interview. You can say, here's what I can offer you. I need these conditions to do it, but when I have these conditions, you're going to get the best work out of me that you can possibly imagine. You're going to have somebody who's a star. Can you do that for me? Is that something you can do? And if somebody is really interested and intrigued with who you are and which that's the whole idea, they'll either say yes or no. Well, isn't it good to know ahead of time, rather than be in another situation that you're going to get frustrated over? So
I have another question talking about stereotypes. I think a lot of people who don't know a lot about ADHD and ADD, like you said, they think of children and they think of hyperactive, bouncing off the walls, kind of loud, uncontrollable sort of thing. Sort of, maybe what's been more visible culturally around ADD. But listening to you, I mean, you're a very calm and collected person. So to hear you say that you had this, I think is very interesting, because it tells me there's probably a whole lot of people out there that maybe outwardly don't appear to have this problem, but inwardly they're very much feeling what you're talking about. Do you see that as well?
Well, absolutely, because that's just a different form of ADD. What I have is the inattentive version, which means I get distracted very easily. I don't necessarily show it, but a lot's going on in my mind. I used to tell people my mind is like Grand Central Station half the time. I feel like I've got things going on around me constantly, and thoughts coming in and out. And I've had to do a lot of meditation, use a lot of tools to help me deal with all that. And that's something that we all need to do, I think, too, in general, but certainly people with ADD need to do a little bit more, maybe. And yeah, I mean, I get off track very, very easily, and I'm always aware of it. I try and stay as aware of it as I can. I have the symptoms that I deal with every single day. And it's a good, bad, and the ugly. And another thing is, I'll just go over some of the symptoms that you may be used to hearing about, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Okay, so some of the symptoms are impulsivity, like you just impulsively will do things, and hyperactivity for the ADH part of it. Lack of focus, you get easily distracted, you get easily bored. Lack of organization. And what I like to say about that is that, yes, I'm disorganized, but I'm organized just enough. So people with ADD do not have to be masters of organization, but just enough so that you can get through your day and keep things relatively intact. But you don't have to be perfect about it, and certainly don't beat yourself up over it because you are disorganized. Another thing is job hopping. And risk taking, and some people take bigger risks than others. That could be a good thing, or that could be kind of a scary thing. For me, I've taken a lot of risks in my work, and I'm very happy that I did. Some good things, some not so good things. Excuse me. The other thing is big picture thinking outside the box. We're the ones who think, wait, we're years ahead of the game. Whereas other people, we want them to catch up. Does that sound familiar?
Gee,
want them to catch up. What about you, Jake?
Yeah, no, I've been told my whole life I would get easily frustrated, and it was my mother that identified it in me and said, "Your brain is here, and you just have to give people a little time to. Your brain's gone through all that; they're going to catch up to you." But it's probably been one of the hardest things for me, so I do relate.
I know. I mean, it's like you just get it, you know. And switching activities, of course, and then hyper focusing, and then being creative, of course. And having, you need to have a place, an outlet for that creativity. And I think the creativity comes when you're doing things like brainstorming. And for some people, it's art. And you see all these crazy artists, they're probably all ADD. They're out there. So there's one extreme to the other. And I would say I'm kind of in the middle of all that.
One of the questions we're getting from one of our listeners is she feels she tends to ask a lot of questions and that she sometimes feels people get frustrated with her by that. Could that be symptomatic of somebody with ADD, that they're very highly inquisitive?
Highly inquisitive? That's not one I've heard of, but you know what? I think I'm always, what I do, and I don't know if you can relate to this, is I always am checking in to make sure people understand what I'm saying. I Now, I don't know if that's the same as asking questions, but that could be another form of it, asking a lot of questions, actually.
I could see asking a lot of questions because your brain's going so fast, you're thinking this, and this, I could definitely see that. I agree with you. I have a tendency, my favorite thing to say to people is, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just sort of become a thing that I say probably 80 times a day. Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. And we're getting a lot of comments from listeners talking about the art and knowing so many people that are very much into art, and that's definitely a sign of it. I have to agree with you. Above all the other things that I see with people is they're generally highly creative. Their brain just puts things together like you've never seen before. And people look at that and go, and I think it intimidates people too. To your point, I think I've met people who have this type of ADD, and people are intimidated by them because they're going so fast. And people can't keep up, and that's a scary thing. That's to be around somebody who can think that quick, don't you think?
Well, I think it is intimidating, absolutely, and it's also maddening to people that are detail oriented. I mean, you have to be careful of those people. So I like to say that every person with ADD should be born with a personal assistant attached to them that runs around with them and sort of fixes everything and takes care of all the details.
The buffer.
So people the buffer. that this should be something we should be born with, and have all the way through school, for anything that we're doing.
Oh, it's
but
brilliant.
Eventually have somebody who can come in and help you do that. It's easy to get other people to do all the details. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like anything, learning coping tools. Having somebody assist you and develop that in you is going to make you better overall, right? So that being said, I don't know where the time goes, but folks, we're coming to the close of today's session. So if you have any specific questions for Shell about career ADD, how to figure out if you have it, you want to ask, what are the symptoms or questions around how to deal with it, please do. Before we answer those questions, or while you're putting those in the chat, I just want to remind you that she is a Careerism approved expert. You can go right over to our site at any time. Simply type in Shell with 2 L's, Mendelson, in our search bar. You'll find her profile, and on her profile is access to her website, her Twitter feed, her LinkedIn profile. So all these links that we've been showing you today, you can get to these in a matter of seconds if you go over to Careerism.com and just type in Shell Mendelson. And I really encourage you to get over specifically to the site that I'm showing you right now, Passion to Career, because this is her home, this is her roost, this is where you can go and talk to her about career ADD. And let me just scroll down there and show you too that one of the things that she has set up here around her own personal story, which you heard a lot of today, and her very successful endeavor with kids art, tapping into her ADD, you can read her story and you can take advantage of a mini session with Shell. So for just $39, you can go right here on the site. You can work and you can tap into this with her, start to have a conversation. You heard her. Really, the kicking off points that you could start to address with her are work environment and the idea of building yourself a roadmap. And so, Shell, if you don't mind, could you talk to people a little bit more about, in that $39 session, what can they expect to do with you?
Well, first of all, I have you answer a few questions online so I'm prepared and we're not wasting our time because it's like a 20, maybe 30-minute session. And ask, like I said, you're going to be answering certain questions, and then I can focus in on those questions with you. And I don't think I've ever had a person who hasn't had a really big takeaway from that. Okay. And it's also a chance for you to figure out if this is a process that you want to get more involved in and take it maybe to the next level. And let me repeat, if you're not where you want to be, how is that working for you? I can help you get unstuck. Sometimes it's like, something that's stuck in all of a sudden it gets loosened and it feels really good to get started. So $39 is not a lot to get a lot of information and to feel like you're starting to recognize whether or not this is something that's important to you, something that you want to continue with.
Well, and I really appreciate you offering this because, one-on-one working with somebody, that's expensive. And so for someone to have an opportunity to work with you on something so specific like this, I think is huge. And I appreciate you extending this to our Careerism TV viewers, especially the ones that are realizing right now after watching this that they do in fact have career ADD, and they're joining the ranks of lots of people. And so I really advise folks to listen to what we talked about today. If this sounds like you and you've been going it alone all this time, it just may be time to get some help. The new year's coming. We're not seeing signs of a massive recovery in the recession. This is here to stay. And so if you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always gotten. And it probably means it's time for you to do some significant changes. And Shell, I just love that you reminded everyone, there is a lot of free information out there. We're very proud of the Careerism site and the free information it provides. But if everybody could solve their problems, with free information, they sure as heck would have done it by now. So, folks, really, go check it out. Great stuff. I want to pop it up there one more time so that you can see it. Right over at passiontocareer.com, mini scheduling session. You can do it right there on the spot at passiontocareer.com and set that up with Shell. So, let me go take a quick look here, Shell, if we've got any questions from our folks. And as well, if I don't have any questions, we're going to probably wrap it up here. But, here we go. I'm seeing them. Lots of good stuff. So I've got a question from Rosalind. What is the right phrase for informational interviews? You said you don't like calling them informational interviews, so what should we call them instead?
Well, because a lot of times what happens is people have used informational interviews to get a job. So the first thing I tell people is never do an informational interview to get a job. You truly are talking to people who are doing something that you're both interested in. They're doing something that you really have a possible passion for. And when you have two people talking about something you're interested in, it's like they love it. Most people love to talk about themselves. So just say, I'm just on the next phase of making a very big decision for myself. And what you do keeps coming up over and over and over again. And I was wondering if you could give me a few minutes of your time, and I'd love to ask you some questions or get to know a little bit more before I make my decision. That's all. Two people talking about something that they both love.
Oh, and leading into the response of that, Denise is listening in today, and she says, Shell, are you able to list some quick coping mechanisms to deal with staying focused in a conversation? So here we are in an informational interview. We're passionate, we're excited. She says, my mind goes so quickly and I just start talking and it all comes out like a blob of information that does not make sense. Also, how do I stay focused when listening to my boss? Denise, I love that. I think pretty much all of us can relate to what you're saying right now. So, Shell, tips for staying focused.
Zip. I'd say zip. Ask the question, sit back, and listen to the answer. I mean, how do you like it when people are talking over you? It's no fun. You want people that are listening to you, they will have so much more respect for you if you just listen to what they say and you're interested, you genuinely are. You, again, as an opportunity to just tell everybody what you want, then you're not actually going to get the information you need to make that decision, right? So, and you also want them to refer you to the next person. So, and don't forget to write the thank you note.
I like that. So basically,
handwritten thank you note.
zip and narrow it in. You're only allowed to ask 3 things now. Another great question here from Hellerman says, I seem to have a new invention or business idea every week. How can someone with ADD succeed in the entrepreneurial setting? Or even get started? So I think that's a great question for you because you stuck with kids' art. So how does that happen? How are they able to focus in and not jump from idea to idea?
I am almost embarrassed to say how I got started with kids' art. And the reason is that I didn't know what I was doing. All I knew is that I had a passion for it. And I'm really good at sort of bringing people together and getting, other people excited. I brought my business partner into it. She was an artist, and she ended up creating the curriculum for it, which is phenomenal curriculum. And she and I, neither one of us were really business people. I mean, I'd always worked on my own, but if you do it my way, you're probably doing it the wrong way. I would say, honestly, if I were to go back, before I had started, I would have taken one of those small business, how boring, but, taking one of those small business courses that the SBA offers, at least to get kind of a basic idea of what you're supposed to do. It covers marketing, but before you even do that, know what it is that you're going for and do the research on it and talk to people, do the informational part of it. That's the first step, really. Get a feel for what the market will bear, what people are wanting out there. And you offer it to them. You give them what they need. If they don't need it, then you don't want to be out there giving it. And if it's not something you love, you don't want to be doing it. I don't know if that helped, but I would say if I could backtrack, I would have taken that course.
Great advice. Jason's asking a question. He's saying, during an interview, what's the best way to collect your thoughts so that you don't sound distracted? I have a hard time thinking and speaking on my feet, and it's affecting my interview performance.
I'm wondering what you're doing. I mean, I'd love to talk to you, but that's a tough question without knowing what it is that you're going in for interviews for. I mean, in general, if you may be interviewing for the wrong job, if you're having that issue. Because if you're interviewing for the right job, the one that you should be doing, those kinds of things will come very naturally. I mean, you will have a natural inclination to listen to what they're saying, because then you'll ask, and the conversation would flow a lot better. So I say that, this may not help you right now, but you may need to go back and do a little bit more of the finding your direction part of it.
Is it advantageous for people with career ADD to do a lot of interview prep so that while they don't sound canned or rehearsed, they are focusing in their answers properly? Does that help them at all in your experience?
I think to a certain extent, yeah, I do. But I think it really depends on what you're going for. If you're just going for an interview for a job, or are you going for something that is what you really want to do? And I'm going to keep coming back to that. I don't care what anyone says. There's no getting around it. And I'm not just going to say it because, everybody's desperate to find work right now. I'm going to keep coming back to, you need to do the inner work, because all that stuff is going to be very easy. It's going to come much more naturally. And the interview process, yes, it always helps to know what, if you're facing a firing line of people and you have a squad, I call it the squad, people, that's how they do interviews these days. Like, you have to go from one squad to the next in some of the big corporations. Yes, you do. It does help to have some idea of how to answer questions and how, especially if it's something that you really want. But when it's something you really want, it's not going to be difficult. It really isn't. They're going to know that you're the right person.
Wow, I love that advice. It's sort of like the Boy Scout model, always be prepared. And I really think you're driving home that point. In this day and age, you just cannot afford not to be prepared. And if you're somebody who's now recognizing you have career ADD, you're really, Shell, just thank you so much for outlining today what these individuals really have to focus on in order to succeed, or it's not going to come for them. And just to recap, folks, we've been talking to Shell for the last hour about career ADD. We've learned so much about the fact and need to make sure you've put yourself in the right work environment, the need to really focus in on something that you love to do, which is very counterintuitive today, right? Everybody's telling you to stop loving what you're doing and just finding a job, but it's refreshing to hear you say, look, folks, if you've got this, that won't ever work for you. So we got to do the tough work. We got to figure out what you want, and then we got to have you go after it. And you know, I really would agree with you. I've seen people like this. I've experienced it. When you've done the work, when you're on the mission, it isn't hard. You know where to go. You know what to do. You're prepared, and you leverage yourself. And, you know, people come to you. It's amazing. But the looking process, it gets less taxing because it's just so natural. So I'm with you 100%. I want to show everybody one more time before we sign off for the day. Please go back over. I'm going to say it. You got to go check out our site, passiontocareer.com. Schedule a mini session for only $39. Talk about your career ADD with Shell. There it is. Shell, I can't believe we have to sign off, but would you give everyone maybe just some closing thoughts, some last things you want to leave with them about career ADD?
I would say if you've been listening to this and you recognize any of that in yourself, then it's time to start taking a closer look. And I hope that you can get out of whatever denial or whatever it is that you may be in that's keeping you stuck, because there's a whole other life out there. It's so much better when you're in that natural state of doing what you're supposed to be doing and not feeling like you have to be a certain way. You have to manage it to a certain extent, but you don't have to be anyone other than who you are, because who you are fits perfectly in that environment and in that job. So if that's you and you haven't done anything about it, you need to call me or click the mini career thing.
Well, I love that you said that, and I agree. I want to add on to that and say that I think you and I both know that when you find that flow, when you do, I think the upside to all of us that have this is that I think we feel more joy than other people.
Oh.
I think when we find it, it's euphoric. If I could bottle it and give it to people, and I know you feel the same way, we got it all over those people that are just doing the 9-to-5 thing and don't have this. So yes, there's a downside to having this because it hurts when you're not in the zone. It does. It's hard. But I'll tell you, when you are in the zone, it's the best, isn't it?
Well, the other thing that, can I just add one more thing? When you're doing the work that you're supposed to be doing with career ADD, you should get paid for it, and you should get paid the most for doing something that comes naturally. I had somebody had to remind me of that the other day.
Yeah.
That it comes so natural to me. I'm so intuitive with all this stuff that it just feels like I could do it all day and not get paid for it, but I should be paid royally for it. Not that I try. Well,
no, you don't. At $39, you do not. It's a great thing. But I know what you're saying, and I agree with you. Not only do we get a great feeling from it, but you're an expert at that point, and you get paid your worth. And I think that that's another thing to remind all these people of is you've got a real income opportunity out there, not just a feel-good factor, but what you're saying is a real income opportunity when you tap into what's right for you.
You should get paid for loving what you do because you're doing the best job that anyone could do at it. And you deserve it.
Well, there you have it, folks. Career ADD, Shell Mendelson. Shell, thank you so much. Will you come back on in January and do another topic with us?
Oh, of course.
Excellent. All right, folks, go over and see her at passiontocareer.com. Shell, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We'll see you back here on Careerism TV real soon. Bye-bye, everyone.